Archie, can you see my screen?
I can see it, yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect, thanks. So in terms of what we're going to go through here, a couple of use cases that I'm going to run through. I'm going to talk around the usability of ThoughtSpot and the whys. Examples of today will be around retail banking, about credit, and those are the use cases that we can see, amongst many others that our customers are using ThoughtSpot for. So just to say, it's impossible to cover all sorts of use cases, and then we are very much interested of talking about individual use cases with you as a follow-up, and sort of understand better what kind of challenges you may face in your organizations. So this next demonstration will be covering potentially how business users can analyze retail banking data, and how we go from going to transactional level of detail of the data to understand customer behavior. But first things first, you can see I'm on a landing page on the website. This is the landing page for a user as they log into the system, and it's all web-based, so there is no concept of downloading data and manipulating, manipulating data locally. Everything is centrally hosted. Everything is centrally and becomes a single version of truth in terms of the data sets that people are searching. So that cannot be changed. The concept of the landing page is also different to what you might be used to in a traditional BI sense. Okay, Archie talked about search and AI. You can see the first thing here on the screen is saying search your data, so we can go straight at asking questions in the way we want to ask. But below that, it's also very custom for my experience and my individual use in terms of what dashboards I'm following as favorites, what KPIs I'm following in the business, and what I've been recently viewing, as well as what others in my team are doing in terms of looking at information or their activities. This is a little bit like the Netflix account. If you use Netflix, you log in and you can see trends and things that you're following. But also on the bottom of the page, you can see it says, did you know? And this is the first exposure to the AI side of things, meaning AI in terms of automated insights in this moment, with lots of machine learning algorithms running in the background, under the hoods, on all of the data that I, as an individual user, have access to. And the system is giving me a tap on the shoulder, is telling me, hey, did you know that there is the number of loans are trending down? Did you know that there is some anomalies in your data? Okay, it could be, and there is some explanations to this, of course. So as an example, for a certain credit card, there is lower revenue of fees compared to average. So any of these you can sort of quickly click into and see what it actually is about. So it's really useful. And this is helping you to get insights to the data in the way that you never may have got otherwise, without even asking the question. Okay, back to the top here. So we are also a BI solution as a whole. So we have the concept of dashboards. Dashboards or any sort of pre-aggregated reports, typically, as Archie was pointing to, there are a number of challenges typically with these. Okay, so they fulfill a purpose. A dashboard like this will answer certain questions, repetitive questions that you might want to cement, but you need to know the questions in advance. And what happens is as you want to build out a dashboard like this or a report, you would typically take your transactional level of data, you would create aggregations, you would create views and summaries, and eventually getting to the level where you can produce a dashboard. The entire structure will serve specific purposes. And if you, as an end user, as a business user, the consumer of this dashboard, have a set of new questions that you can't answer with it, you need to go back to this structure and make changes. If you're lucky, it can take days. If you're unlucky, you might need to put an entire new structure with new summaries and aggregations in place before you can answer those new questions. And it becomes a very time-consuming exercise. And this is a very common trend with most of the organizations we work with. This is causing delays to access the information at the time when they are needed, and frustration, and a lot of times decision making based on gut feeling, because you need to make a decision. So we want to eliminate some of these steps in the middle so that the business users can get the answers to the questions they need. How would they do that? Search. So imagine me, I might be on this day a customer marketing analyst in the business. I want to understand what credit cards are performing well in terms of revenue. I want to look at it at different product name levels, right? So we're going to go here and say, show me all of the credit card information. I want to see the revenue for each of these. I want to look at all of the product names on the credit cards. And to the point of how the technology performs, we came to the market, as Archie was pointing to, we came to the market a number of years ago, not to be another BI and data visualization tool. We came to the market with search and AI experience in mind. Okay, search in terms of being able to ask any questions you want, but also performance and the response time to the questions are equally important, because that is one of the key differentiators that can help you to see a high adoption rate of analytics in a world which is going through digital transformation. So in this scenario, we're looking at a new question that was never asked. Nobody had to design a hierarchy or an aggregation for it to be asked, but we're still getting a response time that is super quick, like Google. So there's quite a lot of data points here. I can be very specific. I might want to see only the last 24 weeks of the data. These questions were never asked before, but I can base it on today's situation. And you can see on the bottom of the page, I'm not only getting the response to the question in terms of a visualization, the Spot IQ Future, the AI element of the platform, is acting immediately again and saying, on the search you just did, there's a few anomalies and trends that you might not have seen yet. For example, in terms of the trend, there's a downward trend for the specific Experience Plus card in these 24 weeks that you are looking at. And you can see exactly how that looks. So again, I might not know the right question to ask all the time, but I keep getting that extra information that I might need to discover issues, anomalies. In certain cases, we have detected fraud in systems that our customers were never realized, because the data was always on an aggregated level and there was no granularity in it, and you couldn't see those individual anomalies in the data points. So we're looking at the last 24 weeks, okay? So we can see which products are performing and how. We might want to focus on a certain product. We could get rid of any of these searches or add to it as we want. But for that product now, I might want to drill down and see all of the transaction types. Again, going deeper down into the data, following the train of my thoughts in the way I need it. Quite a few of them. Now, what are the top 5 products that are performing best? On the contrary to that, we can say, well, what are some of those worst performing ones? And very easily, I can get to some really quick and easy conclusions here. As for example, the number of transaction types that are not performing well on these cards, okay? I can see that the grocery, auto fees, and all these are not really doing well. And I can target to increase the spending in certain of these and then improve them. Okay, so we look at these again. We go back to revenue. I'm doing a new search. I want to ask some new questions. And there is no limitation on the number of questions or how you can ask them. And we don't penalize the users in asking the wrong type of questions. This is, again, going back to performance and being able to handle the variety of different questions, especially also in a world where data is growing and with high data volumes. In a traditional BI sense, if you ask the wrong questions, systems time out, they crash, they can't respond to you fast enough, and those things. But remember, we are designed to work with high volumes of data. So we're looking at revenue, we're looking at number of loans. I want to target the diamond rewards card on this day. And I want to see how different states in the country is performing. So we're looking at the US in this case. And I can immediately get a sense of performance over different regions. If there are certain transaction types that I'm interested of, such as grocery or say utilities, I can quickly add that as a filter. And I can see specifically how these areas are performing. Okay, so this is good. We are a BI tool, so you have the choice of visualizations and so on. I'm not going to focus too much on that because I think most of you guys on the call have seen lots of visualization tools. And this is no strange area for us. Or we can look at the data in different ways. And I can see on this particular view that California, Florida, Texas are some of the high performers, but Missouri or say Indiana are doing less well. Okay, I can very particularly pick an area such as the revenues in Missouri, drill into that, and say, "Help, show me all of the customer names. What are those customers in that specific branch?" And here we go. There are 4 customers that I can work with. There could be maybe ways of targeting them and enhancing the customer experience and the revenue made. Okay, so let's start fresh again. What do we do next? I'm going to target revenue. I'm going to look at transaction type. And on the day, I might want to compare 2 different products. So I will just write diamond rewards card versus travel plus gold card. Yeah. So the way we ask questions with certain keywords, as you can see, is all about enabling search to answer questions rather than the traditional way of if you become technical in BI sense, you have to go and work in a more different interface where you drag and drop or you do queries or you write code, right? There's nothing like that. But whatever we are writing here in the search box is under the hood being translated into what a database query would be like. But the end user experience is not that. The end user experience is a very consumer-like approach. The translation behind the hoods in ThoughtSpot makes it to a technical query in a database house. So that's part of the magic here. So we're quickly comparing now 2 different cards, and we are seeing where customers are spending differently across these 2, right? But what if I don't know the next question? And this is the key here. So I might want to ask for some help. Or I could spend hours asking different questions to find some interesting insights, right? And we don't always have that luxury. So here I can turn to Spot IQ, that AI element, but in a style of on demand, asking for help rather than being fed automatically with information. And I could tell it what to focus on. I might be interested of looking at revenue over time and focusing on product categories. And with that, I'll just hit analyze the data for me. So what this is now doing is taking those specific set of questions and the search that I've done, and it's running and drilling into the details in thousands of different ways with machine learning algorithms. And it's going to come back to me with certain results. So what you can see here is that I am being presented with 3 specific insights where data, almost 60 million rows of data was analyzed in less than 4 seconds. And this is now giving me some additional answers to the data that I have never asked about before. As an example, there is a certain transaction type for home that is significantly higher in revenue compared to the others in certain times. So for example, October 2017 was a big outlier. And I can look into these. So all of these things are additional questions that are being answered on the fly for me. Okay, I'm going to continue. I'm going to show you a few more examples with a different data set. I'm going to log out here, log back in with a different use case.
Yeah, thanks very much, Daniel. I just want to put it out there. If there's any questions, if someone wants to pose a question, just type it on the chat, and I'll field those questions. Thanks, Daniel.
That's great. Thank you. So before I continue here, I just want to say, again about use cases. So what you just seen about retail banking and being able to work with data in that sense. We have customers such as CMC, we have Nationwide, we have Credit Union, the Royal Banks of Scotland. These are just some of the names I can mention today, and who are using ThoughtSpot in this way and allowing the business users in organizations to work with data. Okay, for example, imagine in customer service where you're receiving calls, and on a given call with a given customer, you need to have a 360 view of your data. You need to understand the customer and give a custom experience and response to the customer on the call. These are challenges that the organizations are facing, and instead of being making decisions and respond to a customer based on average trends and statistics, you can make that experience very custom, very targeted, by having all of the information that the people need at hand, at their fingertips, when they are dealing with the customer. Okay, so in terms of credits, I just want to look through another use case. Loan defaults are typically can result in huge losses in retail banking, right? And this is again an area where we're seeing ThoughtSpot being used in action at retail banks. They analyze delinquency and identify loans that are at risk. And this is sort of enabling them to proactively work with borrowers and try to avoid any costly write-offs or foreclosures. Okay, so again, the delinquency rate, in this scenario that I'm going to play on, we know that they have been trending upwards for a number of months, but instead of going into and trying to answer with the dashboard again, we go back into search. We'll start typing. I want to see the monthly numbers for delinquency rating. It's quite a few months. If you look at this trend line, we have quite a few months. We might want to focus on the last 12 months. So here is the starting point. You can see that increase in the rating, which is not desired. So the thing I'm going to do here is to show you also how we can create dashboards on the fly. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet is we looked at a pinboard or a dashboard earlier on. Anyone as a ThoughtSpot customer or user can create these pinboards. Let's take an example here when we go through this sample demo. So I'm going to call this Daniel's pinboard. And what I'm doing here is I'm immediately pinning this particular visualization to my pinboard for use later on. So now going back to the scenario, I might want to take the latest month here, drill down and see the branch regions. So immediately I see there are two branches, East and Midwest. Again, this is the US in terms of the scenario. So you're looking at East and Midwest regions. They, in the recent month, have seen the highest rate. So we can pin this as well to the pinboard. So I go back and say, pin it there, save it for later use. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to look at how those delinquent are, those past due loans in the two regions that we were looking at, right? So I need a breakdown in terms of number of delinquent loans by different delinquency category. So I'm going to go ahead and say, well, show me the number of delinquent loans by the delinquency category, only for the last month that we were looking at. And the two regions I want is Midwest, and I'm going to look at Midwest and East. Here we go. So this is immediately showing an outlier, in terms of those who are 90 to 180 days delinquent really stand out in terms of the percentage difference. You can see that that's making up almost half of all of the cases. So might want to look into these and see which loans and identify the borrowers. So before I do that, let's pin it to the pinboard again, save it for later use, and then drill into these 90 to 180 days and look at all of the loan IDs. A lot of times we want to get to a moment where we have insights that we can take action on, right? Because if we are talking about BI in general, and we are looking at getting some interesting insights and visualizations, but without the ability to actually do something with it, then that's insight that is of no use at all. So here I'm looking at the most transactional level of detail. I have 46 loans that are standing out. And I'm going to give this table a bit of more additional context to understand it better and understand how I should prioritize these loans and the actions I'm going to take. So I'm adding a number of data points to it. I can see the total amount outstanding here. And with this in mind, I can now easily see which loans I should prioritize and take action on first. And again, I'm going to pin it to a pinboard. So let's do that. Say done. And what this is effectively is a quick example of how we have enabled users to search data at a very high level. They see an area of concern in terms of raise of delinquency rating. Okay, they get down to a specific month, and they go down to the most granular level of detail, looking at individual loans, looking at the branches and the outstanding amounts, and really can take action on this, right? So if I go back to my pinboard now that I created, you can see that I've actually saved the entire story. And the proof point here is anyone really can create these pinboards, right? As I've just mentioned. A few interesting things here that I would say. We want to also enable easier communication between colleagues and collaboration. So as an example, if I was a rep here and I needed to show this or share this with my manager, I could go ahead and say, send this with some optional text to the manager to have a look at. Or I could jump on a conference call with him or her quickly and go through this in presentation mode. And especially during these times of COVID-19 and people being forced to stay at home and working remotely, I would say it's not only super important that they can have access to data in the way we enable access and asking questions, but also the collaboration piece becomes important because I might need to have an approval for the next action, or I need to have some advice. And this is the way we can do that, enabling collaboration and a conversation that needs to happen between people over data points. So last example I'm going to run here, going back to the monthly delinquency rating, looking at the last 18 months as an example. I might want to do a comparison, direct comparison between those two regions, right? I'm going to say I want to compare Midwest versus East. So this is now showing me sort of the differences between those two. Okay, it shows that both regions have had an increase over the last few months. East has fluctuated potentially a little bit more than Midwest. And there are certain things that you can drill into and look at potentially. But if I want to just have some additional help here again, I can turn to Spot IQ and I say, can you show me some additional insights, please? Maybe you look at the delinquency rating, the number of delinquent loans, the categories. Also look at the customer names. Have a look at the loan IDs and maybe the loan terms, and say analyze. Okay. What's happening now is drilling into those details and looking at different data sets. I prepared this question before because it takes sometimes 10, maybe up to 20 seconds to run. I didn't want you guys to wait during a live demo. But it's the same question I asked before. And here is the result sets. Again, 16 insights based on analyzing over 10 million rows of data. And I was looking at this earlier and I was thinking, well, the delinquency rating in East by customer full name here as an example. Michael Lee is a customer that had a significantly higher delinquency rating in that region in September 2019. What are some of the other examples? Here's another customer, Ava Jones, in March 2019, had a higher rating, okay? I was looking at another one, customer named Emily Young in January 2019 being the outlier, and so on. Now, as I was looking at this, I saw Michael Lee coming up again. And this is interesting because I was talking about trends or troublesome customers, those who repeatedly abuse the services or offers that might be given to them, or if you want to see other kind of specific outliers with specific data points. Michael Lee in this example, in a certain month of September, stood out in terms of the delinquency rate, both in Midwest and East, okay, two different regions. And this is the sort of things that you may never see in your day-to-day analysis, but it could be fraud, it could be a bad customer. And Spot IQ is a perfect solution and support in finding those hidden insights, so you can take subsequent action on it, right? And what's interesting here is also we do ask the users to give feedback. So if this insight was useful, you can give it a thumbs up. If the next ones are of less use, you can give it a thumbs down and say, give a feedback on why you think that's a bad analysis. And what's happening here is ThoughtSpot is not just search and AI in terms of responding, being responsive to your questions, but it's also getting the feedback from you, as well as looking at all of the searches that you do over time. And will customize the experience for every individual in the organization. So think about that for a moment. When you log into your social media accounts, or if you go to Google today and you do searches, those systems will know you as a user. You will know your profile, your history, and customize the experience for you. And we do the exact similar things here in ThoughtSpot. We customize the experience. We learn from the past usage of data for every individual, and we will customize it and make it better over time. So the more you use ThoughtSpot, the more relevant will become the Spot IQ insights, the better will become the search, and so on. Now I'm going to quickly wrap up here with a customer story. And the individual customer I want to mention is Fannie Mae. It's the Federal National Mortgage Association in the US. Last year they did over 200 billion of USD in terms of revenue. Okay, prior to having ThoughtSpot, they were relying on legacy BI solutions, and that put them in this situation like many others, where technical expertise was needed when business users couldn't answer questions. Okay, as a result, like any other situation when that happens, teams were waiting weeks for answers from a central BI team for every new ad hoc report request. Okay, then they implemented ThoughtSpot, and with that, they started to provide loan servicing and single-family mortgage teams with direct access to data. They started to search across all of these areas like loan servicing, customer, product data from a single place. And they have now created that single place, which means giving everyone a complete 360 customer view. And for that reason, teams can now very quickly answer questions for customers, easily drill down to details, and get any additional information they need at the time when they need it to make better decisions, on-time decisions without delay. And this has increased the customer experience and also had an impact on customer retention. I'm gonna stop here, Archie. I think I talked long enough for the day. We have some time left. I don't know if there's any questions coming in or if you wanted to take over.
Sure. I see there's a question there from one of the attendees. Is it difficult to import my data and teach ThoughtSpot my business terms? So, Daniel, do you want to field that one? Maybe just give a quick overview. I mean, you can show it on the system in terms of how to get data in and maybe the aliases, if you don't mind.
There is different ways of ingesting data. I'm just going to see if I have access to this from this particular user account. Okay, so this particular demo account I'm using doesn't allow me to load data. Well, it does for some extent. So one way is to actually work directly with files. So some end users might have some data they want to analyze, and you can, in a traditional BI self-service approach, you can drop a file or a CSV file into ThoughtSpot. You upload it and you start analyzing the data. But for other data sources, typically you see organizations, they invest in data warehouses, they invest in certain data sources, and we are very good at making use of those data sources. We connect to data, whether that's in a data warehouse. We can connect to them live in a live mode, or extract the data and copy that into ThoughtSpot. So there are different ways of creating data into ThoughtSpot. And again, in a traditional BI way, you can create additional data points, you can create formulas, build your own KPIs. These are all capabilities for the analyst personas or more advanced users to do more with it than just searching. I don't know if that answers the question, or if you have anything to add, Archie.
No, I think that's great. I think maybe if you can just click on that on the data tab, and it's a question that comes up quite often, is around so in a database your field names might not be very user friendly, or not all of your business users would use the same terms. So if you were to, for instance, click on one of those tables, let's take credit right at the top, and there's a field there, for instance. Okay, they all look pretty good to me, but the point here is you can quite easily add aliases to those field names. So if for instance one part of the business understands sales, the other part of the business only understands revenue, and it actually means the same thing at a data level, then you could add both of those terms to your data set or to your worksheet, and when your user then interrogates the data, they can either use revenue or sales, and it will actually point to the same underlying data. Great. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm going to end the WebEx here now, and I will be sending out details around where you can potentially download the recording, as well as details on our next WebEx for next week, which will be aimed around working capital management. Great. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day. Ciao. Thanks, Daniel.
My pleasure.